Hi, welcome back. My name is Michelle and you're watching Michelle's Life. Today's video is my monthly wrap-up slash TBR check-in number 3. This month I read 8 books, which for me is really good. Usually I only read about 6, so I'm very proud of myself. I also participated in 3 different readathons. I had 5 4-star reads this month, 1 5-star read, 1 3.5-star read, and 1 3-star read. In my first TBR check-in, I talk about Sweet Evil, Unicorn Tracks, and If I Was Your Girl. Sweet Evil I gave 4 stars, Unicorn Tracks I also gave 4 stars, and If I Was Your Girl was my only 5-star read of the month. So if you want to know more about my thoughts on those books, you can definitely click the link to that video and check that out. TBR check-in number 2, I read Tell Me Again How a Crush Should Feel, and I gave that book 4 stars, and I talked about Name of the Wind, which I also gave 4 stars. So if you want to know more about my thoughts on those books, you can click on the video to go check that out. In this wrap-up, I have read Well of Ascension, and I'm giving that book 4 stars, and None of the Above, and I'm giving that book 3 stars. I also finished Sweet Peril, which is the second book in the Sweet Evil trilogy, and I'm giving that book 3.5 stars. So Well of Ascension I actually started back in March? I think it was March, with Karen over at A Simple Cup of Tea, and we read around the first 400 pages. And then I put it down because I had other buddy reads that I needed to get to, and we agreed that we'd pick it back up. And I was really bad, and I kind of just started it and I forgot to tell her, so I'm sorry, Karen, please forgive me. I really enjoyed the beginning and the very end of this book. In the middle it got a little laggy. This book focuses more heavily on politics and military and stuff like that, so it did drag for me because those aren't really topics that I normally enjoy. But that's one thing I really appreciate about Sanderson is that he can take things like action scenes and politics and military life and make it interesting and understandable for me, which is really difficult. So I think if those are some topics that you have a hard time with, but you really want to enjoy all of the other elements of this world, like the magic system and the characters, because the characters are so good, I definitely recommend it, because if I can understand it and enjoy it, anyone can. So again, I gave this one 4 stars. After reading Well of Ascension, I read None of the Above by I.W. Gregorio. This was the last and final book that I read for the Read Proud Challenge hosted by Julia Embers. This is a story of an intersex girl who finds out that she has AIS or is intersex after having her first sexual encounter with her high school boyfriend after prom. She winds up going to a gynecologist and just to make sure that she's okay to be sexually active, and to try to talk about the pain that she experienced during intercourse. That's where she finds out that she needs to go for more testing because she has testes inside her and she doesn't have a uterus. So she goes through the motions and has to understand what that means. And one really great thing that I appreciated about this book was her father and how supportive he was. He was very involved in researching what was going on with her and what needed to be done and just different things to comfort her, and he was just a really great character. As always, I really appreciate author's notes that they include in these books, so I wanted to read you the author note really quick. I will use a different filter really quick over this part, so if you want to skip ahead you can, but I think it's really important. I was a 5th year surgical resident when I met my first intersex patient, and she still haunts me. Like Kristen, my patient had AIS. Like Kristen, she was a teenager when she found out. After I helped with the operation to remove her gonads, I saw her post-operatively. She came from a very poor and disadvantaged background, and I think I was the first person to really talk to her about her condition and what to expect in the future. During our office visit, she was remarkably stoic, uninterested almost. She had come to our clinic alone, so I was worried about her support system. I also knew there were questions she would only think of after the appointment, so I made sure to give her information about the AIS support group. In retrospect, that was probably the single most important thing that I did for her. After the clinic visit, I never saw my AIS patient again, but she stayed in my thoughts. I've always wondered what became of her and how she came to terms with her diagnosis. Did she have a boyfriend? What happened the first time she tried to have sex? Who did she tell, if anyone, about her condition? It was early 2009. I was pregnant with my first child and daughter. Just months later, Caster Semenya's story hit, and it became clear to me that Intersex was a perfect jumping off point for a discussion of tolerance, feminism, and gender essentialism. It begs so many questions. What does it mean to be a woman? What happens when you don't fit perfectly into the gender binary? What roles does your biology play, not only in who you love, but who loves you? As I began researching my story, it became clear to me that the great challenge of writing about intersex is that it encompasses so many different variations of biology and personal experience. There is no one intersex story. That said, it became clear that there were two controversies within the intersex community that I needed to address if I hoped to contribute responsibly to intersex awareness. The first is the question of naming. While some of the medical community advocates use the term disorder of sex development, DSD, this phrase has been criticized because the word disorder suggests something inherently wrong. So it has been replaced by many with the term differences in sex development. In none of the above, I chose to use the term intersex. I also made the difficult decision to have some of my characters use the word hermaphrodite in the pejorative sense because intersex awareness isn't widespread enough to have eradicated the term. In recent years, though, some intersex people have reclaimed the word hermaphrodite in much the same way that gay men and women did the word queer. While this usage isn't for everyone, it gives me hope that someday in the future the term will be freed from its stigma. The second issue is that of surgery. Until the early 2000s, intersex children were operated on with some regularity, often as infants. There are countless stories of intersex children whose genitalia were corrected in a way that caused irreparable harm and suffering, all in the name of relieving parents' stress by normalizing their baby's anatomy with what was essentially a cosmetic surgery. These days, due to the efforts of intersex awareness organizations including Accord Alliance, Organizational Intersex International, and advocates for informed choice, the strong recommendation is to hold off on surgery until the child is old enough to A. have a formed gender identity, B. consent to surgery knowing the full risks and benefits. Unfortunately, despite these recommendations, some intersex children are subject to unnecessary surgeries, underscoring the urgent need to educate physicians and parents on changing guidelines. If there is anything I know as a surgeon, it's that every surgery has risks. So I struggled when I came to the part of Kristen's narrative where she opted for gonadectomy. In the end, with her family history of cancer and the physiological space she was in, it was the right choice for her. Importantly for me, she went in with her eyes wide open. I couldn't have written none of the above with a wit of authenticity without the incredible support of the AIS community. And then she goes on to say thanks to people. Anyway, I really think that's really important before you go into this book because while I was reading it, I was kind of offended at how many times the characters used the word hermaphrodite and how offensive it came off as, and then there are several mentions of LGBTQIA people on the spectrum and they're kind of mentioned in a negative light, and I didn't really like that either. I thought that the topic was really important of intersex, and I thought that the resources that I.W. Gregorio provided by saying that these support groups are really great and there is help out there and there are people to talk to. I thought that was really great, and I loved the father figure who supported the main character. So that's kind of why I gave it a 3-star instead of higher. The last book that I read for this month is Sweet Peril by Wendy Higgins. This is again the second book in the Sweet Evil trilogy, and it's kind of like Ocean 11. They're collecting different Nephilim children for their cause. I don't want to say more than that because it is a sequel. Again, the sexual tension is like way higher in this book than it was even in the first book, and I thought it was high in that book. But I don't necessarily want to say that it's not a YA book because kids in high school are having sex, so I think it's okay for sex to be in their books, at least this level of sexual tension that you feel in these, I think it's okay. There is a love triangle, and it's definitely not the worst love triangle I've read. I just didn't really enjoy it. I did, however, love the diverse cultural cast of characters and how they were explained. I thought that was really good. I don't know if it was accurate, but I did enjoy going to the different countries and meeting these characters and how different and eclectic they all were together and how their personalities worked together. So I thought that was really enjoyable, and I gave that one 3.5 stars. So the readathons that I participated in this month was the Read Proud Challenge, and for that I read If I Was Your Girl, Unicorn Tracks, Tell Me Again How a Crush Should Feel, and None of the Above. I completed the Silver Challenge, which was to read 4 books for that month in LGBTQIA categories. The next one that I participated in was Tome Topple, hosted by Sam over at Thoughts on Tomes. I completed the first challenge, which was read more than 1 tome. I read Name of the Wind and Ascension. I didn't complete the challenge number 2, which was to read a graphic novel. Challenge 3 was to read a tome that is part of a series. Both of my tomes were. And 4 was read over 500 pages in that week of one of your tomes, which I did. And then number 5 was read an adult tome, which both of my tomes were. So I completed all the challenges except for number 2. And then the last readathon that I participated in was TBR Takedown 4.0. I did not do a vlog for that because it was very last minute and I didn't have the time. So for that I read Tell Me Again How a Crush Should Feel for the first challenge, which was a book that has been on your shelf for over a year. That one wasn't really on my shelf for over a year, but it has been on my shelf for a long time, so I'm fibbing and I'm putting it in there. Number 2 was to read a sequel, and I read Well of Ascension. Number 3 was a first in a series. I didn't read anything during that week that fit that category. And 4 was Out of Your Comfort Zone. I didn't do that one either. And then the most recent book haul, I had planned on reading Sleeping Tom, but I started it, I didn't get to finish it. So anyway, that's it for this month. I didn't have any buddy reads, but I was keeping busy with all the readathons, so I'm not going to participate in any more readathons for a while. So that's it. I really appreciate you watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting. Let me know what your favorite read of the month was. Again, mine had to have been Meredith Rousseau's If I Was Your Girl, and the audiobook read by Samia Mounts was just phenomenal. I don't know if I've told you enough. Go listen to that audiobook or go read that book. It's so great. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!